I'm going to do something a little different today. It's not going to be what most folks would consider a normal Sunday school lesson. I want to use a little logic and common sense to help you whenever the devil shoots one of them flaming arrows at you, to help you use shield of faith to quench that thing. I've done a lot of lessons on the whole armor of God, and everybody knows that pretty much by heart, I hope. I'm going to look at something a little different today. I'm going to look at Satan's bow and arrows. Sooner or later, the devil's going to shoot one of these arrows at your head. That's where he shoots them, because they enter your mind and they poison your thinking. And he's going to shoot one of these thoughts at you and challenge your faith. Most of these arrows they're made up of atheist ideas and atheist suspicions. That's what Paul was talking about in Ephesians 6 when he said, above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all of the fiery darts of the wicked. Now, from a human standpoint, I don't know anybody that likes to be bamboozled, buffaloed, lied to, or conned. And have you ever just been minding your own business, going about your day and everything, and just a little random thought? What if this ain't nothing but a big old hoax? What if it's just made up stuff? What if it's a myth? Have we been bamboozled or hoodwinked by a fairy tale, or, I like this one, hornswoggled by a lie? Or we might have just been slip-shucked by old Satan. I hope everybody knows what all them things mean, but anyway. Well, no, we can't be slip-shucked by Satan if Christianity ain't the truth, because if God ain't real, then the devil ain't real either. But anyway, I'm going to go through some of this atheistic logic real quick, and I'm just going to read what they say. This come off of the Atheist Alliance International website. Is where this come from, so it's pretty much what they believe. And I'm just going to read it right straight, and then I'm going to go through reasons to believe in God, logical reasons that you can use to put this stuff out with. All right, and I'm just going to read the article. This is the atheist talking, okay? There is very little that we can prove in this world. We can look for evidence to support claims people make, and then when there's a lot of evidence and no contrary evidence, we can pretty much figure a claim is probably, but not definitely true. But it's easy to prove something's false. All you need is one piece of contradictory evidence. So what about Christianity? Is there any evidence that contradicts or casts doubt on Christianity? I think there's a lot. Now, to keep this article brief, I will describe the evidence without giving all the details, but most of it is so well known that even Christians should be aware that this evidence exists. Number one, there's clear evidence that prayer does not work despite the Bible promising prayers will be answered. There's clear evidence that humans invent gods. Humans have invented so many gods that everybody just assumes that there should be a God, and it's invented by humans. There's clear evidence that religions and gods are propagated through culture by infecting children, and there's no evidence that they're propagated by gods. Has anybody ever had any of these thoughts, or it just crossed your mind and then you struggle with it? There's clear evidence that Christianity has evolved as a human understanding of the world, and it has changed over time, while a real God-given religion should never need to change. There's clear evidence that humans on this planet don't all have the same access to Christianity. So if Christianity was true, then billions of people would be condemned to hell through no fault of their own, and that contradicts the Christian notion that God is benevolent. There's clear evidence that the Bible, supposedly inspired by God, is sprinkled with the kind of errors that you would expect from its Iron Age authors, but you wouldn't expect from the creator of the universe. Christian theology is incoherent to the point of being absurd. God killing his son so he can forgive our future sin is like me breaking my son's legs so I could forgive my neighbor in case she parks her car on my driveway. It's ridiculous. This is the last one. There is clear evidence that the arguments presented for the existence of God are logically flawed. All of them have been shown to be unreliable. If this were not the case, all honest and intelligent people would accept that God exists the same way honest and intelligent people accept that black holes exist. So all that is left for Christians is faith and feelings. We know that faith and feelings can be used to believe anything, including non-existent gods. So, faith and feelings can't help us determine if Christianity is true. Those are some of the saddest, emptiest words I've ever heard. Sad and empty. Imagine having to live your life being that hopeless, with no love or joy or peace and no hope, because there's just a big nothing after you die. Nothing. Paul talks about these peoples like this in Romans 1, starting with verse 17. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith. As it is written, the just shall live by faith, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So, whenever one of them random atheist thoughts crosses your mind, and it will, sooner or later, old devil's going to draw that bow back and shoot one of them at you, and you'll think it's coming from you. Have you ever noticed how the devil works? When he wants you to think something, he'll use your voice inside your head to talk to you, and you will think it is you. It's the devil. Anyhow, how can ye possibly know for sure that God exists? You can't see him, can't hear him, touch him, smell him, or taste him. You can't weigh him like a 5-pound sack of taters. You can't put him under an electron microscope and show your friends what he looks like down there on the atomic level. You can't experiment with him with probes and scalpels and stuff. You can't take a picture of him to show your neighbor that he's not just an imaginary friend. You can't magically make him appear in the classroom of an atheistic college professor who's daring anybody to prove that God exists. So, how can you know for sure that God exists? Well, all you got to do is not be an idiot. Anybody that follows the trail of solid scientific evidence will come to the logical conclusion that God has to exist, even though we can't see his spirit or physically touch him. John 4:24. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And Luke 24:39, Jesus said, Behold, my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as ye see me have. That came after he was resurrected, by the way. We have whole mountains of evidence, scientific evidence that God is real, logical evidence. Consider, I've got 7 reasons that you can paint on the front of your shield of faith, and when one of them fiery darts from the devil comes up, you put that shield up. Everybody knows that matter exists. The universe and every atom that makes it up is real. Well, matter's got to have a maker. You have to have a maker for it. It's logical for you to ask, well, where did it all come from? What caused it? Who made it all from the tiniest single little atom to the entire universe? Who made that stuff? Well, the scientists have a thing they call the law of cause and effect that has been proven over and over and over that all effects have to have causes. The law of cause and effect says that everything that happens physically has to have a cause, and they call it the law of causality or something like that. When they put that American flag up there on the moon back in 1969, it didn't just happen. It didn't just appear. It hadn't been there eternally. It didn't just happen by itself without a cause. And those rovers that's driving around on the surface of Mars, taking all them pictures and stuff, they didn't just mysteriously pop into existence out of nothing. And here's a good one. For those rovers on Mars, nobody believes that an accidental explosion in a junkyard on Earth sent metal flying to Mars that just sort of somehow assembled itself into them rovers once they got there. That's how stupid that is. All right. Did the Big Bang, do I have to explain what the Big Bang is? I hope not. Did the Big Bang create all the matter in the universe? Well, the Big Bang Theory claims to explain the reason all this stuff exists is that about 14 billion years ago, all of the matter and all of the energy in the universe was concentrated in this little tiny ball of matter. And that little ball of matter exploded. And that caused the eventual formation of galaxies throughout the entire universe. Well, they really believe that, I think, but they backed themselves in a corner. There's some big problems with that theory. Evolutionists say the universe started when a tiny ball of matter exploded several billion years ago, but they can't figure out where the tiny ball of matter come from or why it exploded. Y'all remember that crippled guy, Stephen Hawking, that was so messed up, the way he talked was by moving his eyes and stuff like that because he was messed up so bad. Everybody thinks he's such a genius and everything. He said that nothing caused the Big Bang. And he was an atheist, atheist cosmologist. Stephen Hawking said on national television in 2011 that nothing caused the Big Bang. He said bodies such as stars and black holes can't just appear out of nothing, but an entire universe can. In 2007, the New Scientist magazine ran a cover story titled "The Beginning, What Triggered the Big Bang?" After mealy-mouthing around trying to talk out of both sides of their mouth at the same time, they finally had to admit the utter foolishness of the theory. Okay, here's what they said. The quest to understand the origin of the universe seems destined to continue until we can answer a deeper question. Why is there anything at all instead of nothing? The reason he asked that is the universe is not eternal. It had a beginning. And there wouldn't be no point in trying to explain the beginning of the universe in a big bang if the atheist really believed that it was eternal, that it existed forever. There was a time in the past when the universe didn't exist. There was nothing. Then at some point, somebody or something created matter. And it had to be something supernatural because it had to be a force beyond scientific understanding or the laws of nature, but something outside of the material realm, because matter's not eternal. Matter cannot create itself out of nothing. So something outside of the physical realm had to bring matter into existence. It had to have a maker. The universe, the fact that there is a universe don't make sense unless there is an supernatural being that is infinitely and eternally powerful. But it can't be natural and it can't be physical. It's got to be outside of time and space. Romans 1:20. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Unless some type of supernatural, infinite, eternal power created it, the universe couldn't exist. The atheistic argument, there's one arrow the devil will shoot at you, the atheistic argument that the universe somehow sort of created itself out of nothing is absurd. It's not a scientific explanation, and it's not even a logical explanation. All right? Number 2, life. Life demands a life giver. Just like matter, life does not ever somehow just pop into existence out of nothing. That cute little puppy down there at the pound that your granddaughter wants, and that bacteria that you leave on the bathroom door didn't just spontaneously create itself out of nothing. Every scientist knows that's true, regardless of whether he believes there's a God or not. The scientists call it the law of biogenesis. In biology, it's one of the most widely recognized laws of science. And it's the biogenesis is made out of 2 words, bio, which means life, and genesis, which means beginning. The law of biogenesis, scientific law of biogenesis, says that in nature, life comes only from life of its own kind. Over the years, that law has been proven over and over thousands of times by scientists like Louis Pasteur and so on. Pasteur's work almost destroyed the evolutionary theory of spontaneous generation. In 1933, there was this evolutionist named John Sullivan who had to admit it became an accepted doctrine that life never arises from life. So far as the actual evidence goes, this is still the only possible conclusion. Okay. But that was 1933. Is that still true? What have we learned since the days of Louis Pasteur? We've come to the same conclusion in experiment after experiment, time after time. In 1966, the atheistic evolutionist George Gaylord Simpson observed that there's no serious doubt that biogenesis is the rule, that life comes only from other life, that a cell, the unit of life, is always and exclusively the product or offspring of another cell. All right. In 2009, another atheist evolutionist, Neil Shubin, said, I can share with you one true law that all of us can agree upon. This law is so profound that most of us just take it for granted, yet it is the starting point for almost everything we do in paleontology, developmental biology, and genetics. This biological law of everything is that every living thing on this planet had parents. Every person you've ever known had biological parents. Every bird, every salamander, every shark. To put it more precise, every living thing sprang from some parent genetic information. Now, Shubin confessed that because scientific research and examination showed that all life comes from previously existing life. They admit it's true, but then they get stumped. They refuse to go the next step. They refuse to carry that fact to its logical conclusion that life could not have created itself from non-living chemicals. Evolution can't explain the most basic law of science, the law of biogenesis. So, how did the very first life come into being? Did the first life just somehow break the most fundamental law of biology and just sort of rise up naturally from non-life? Well, there is another possibility. But these evolutionists like John Sullivan find it too hard to accept. Sullivan said, biogenesis is the only possible conclusion, but it is a conclusion that seems to lead back to some supernatural creative act. Huh? Did a hardcore scientist really admit that it had to be a supernatural act? That means there had to be a supernatural creator. Now, these ain't friends of God talking. These are enemies of God that are admitting it had to be supernatural. Okay, this guy up at Harvard said there's only two possibilities for the origin of life: spontaneous generation or a single primary act of supernatural creation, and there is no third position. But in spite of that, most modern biologists still refuse to accept creation. The evidence clearly points to it, but atheists would rather put their confidence in the stupid theory of spontaneous generation that's already been disproven. Anthony Flew was one of the most prominent atheists in the world for over 50 years. But before he died back in 2012, he admitted the only logical, satisfactory explanation for the origin of life which we see on earth is an infinitely intelligent mind. Now that was, like I said, that was an enemy of God admitting that. All right. So now you got two things to paint on your shield. Number 3, design. Design has to have a designer. When you start looking at how complex and intricate creation is designed, it's pretty obvious somebody had to design it. Painters have to have paintings have to have painters, poems got to have poets, architecture's got to have architects, cars, computers, planes, and all this stuff require engineers and technicians and tuners and all that stuff for them to exist and to work properly. But what about the whole universe? Has it been designed? And if it has, what does its design tell us about its designer? Well, no honest person can deny that the universe is extremely fine-tuned and complex, like the Earth's orbit around the sun, like these seabirds' 15,000-mile migration pattern, the incredible consistency in the size, shape, and electrical charge of individual atoms. Even atheist scientists have to admit the universe is designed. But according to atheist dogma, which contradicts that, the universe is the result of some mindless, natural, random process. Anyway, In 2008, National Geographic magazine used the word design 7 times when it was talking about nature's designs. And the guy that wrote it, an evolutionist named Tom Muller, referred to nature's sophistication and clever devices and praised nature for being able to turn simple material into structures of fantastic complexity, strength, and toughness. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard, just to tell you. In 2009, this other evolutionist, atheist, Jerry Cohen, admitted that nature resembles a well-oiled machine, and the more you learn about plants and animals, the more you marvel at how well their design fits their life. So, how do you get a design without a designer? A design, Merriam-Webster gives its definition of design as a particular purpose held in view by an individual or group. It's deliberate, purposeful planning, a mental project or scheme in which a means to an end are laid down, or a deliberate project or scheme. Now, a design is the result of deliberate, purposeful planning. By its definition, design has to have a designer. Its design is not the result of just long periods of time, chance, or unintelligent, random, accidental explosions, but of purpose and planning. You can see the hand of the designer in the world because it looks designed. Our universe looks just right for life. It looks like a super intelligence has been monkeying around with physics. If you've got good common sense and you're honest about it, you got to agree with Psalms and Isaiah. Psalm 19, verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. And Isaiah 6, verse 3. The whole earth is full of his glory. Isaiah 40, 26. Lift up your eyes on high, and behold, who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number, and calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power, not one faileth. You can know without a doubt that God exists. And I'm not talking about that warm fuzzy that comes over you when the Holy Ghost hits you. I'm talking about logic, good old cold, hard human logic. If the universe has a complex functional design, and if a complex functional design has to have a designer, then the universe has an intelligent designer. The logic is clear, and that answer's easy for anybody to see. You can know without any doubt that God is real because everything in the universe has got his signature on it. Hebrews 3, verse 4. For every house is builded by some man, but he that built all things is God. All right. Now, number 4, intelligence. Some of us, never mind. I'll let that go. Intelligence. Let's talk about intelligence for just a minute. Intelligence is the ability to acquire and apply knowledge. It's the ability to learn or understand things, and it's the ability to deal with new or difficult situations. Now, it ain't hard to find things that have got a little intelligence. It ain't hard to find things that have a little intelligence. Some things ain't got no intelligence at all, and men have an extremely high level of intelligence, but it's nowhere near as high as women's, of course. We have done stuff like build spaceships that can go 250,000 miles to the moon, while the moon and the earth are both moving around. We can do that. We've made artificial hearts that can extend the lives of people. We can build computers that can process billions of pieces of information every second. We can write poetry and paint paintings and build everything from pianos to PlayStations. Man is an extremely intelligent being. Now, animals they've got intelligence, but there's a big difference in the intelligence of mankind and animals. Animals do have intelligence, though. Anybody that's ever fooled with horses knows that. Dogs can learn how to sit. They can learn tricks. They can sit, stay, roll over, and play dead. Dolphins can train their handlers to feed them fish when they jump through it. No, I got that backwards. Anyway, birds can make tools out of twigs to get food, poke in a hole and get food. Now, according to the atheist, this is another one of them arrows that the devil will shoot at your brain. According to atheists, billions of years after the Big Bang, galaxies begin to form themselves out of dirt and rocks and lifeless, mindless, unintelligent particles of dirt floating around in space. Somehow or other, Earth evolved out of that dirt cloud. Then hundreds of millions of years later, intelligent animals and humans just happened and managed to evolve themselves. Have any of y'all ever been able to evolve yourself? I wonder. But scientific observation of nature has proven that intelligence don't just happen. It requires previous intelligence. Okay, the reason some of us are intelligent is because our ancestors were intelligent. The reason that animals have a degree of intelligence is because intelligent animals came before them. Now, a cloud of dust, rocks, and dirt does not organize itself into magic particles that have the capacity to acquire and apply knowledge. Water don't know how to think. Intelligent life didn't just magically happen in a mud puddle. That's a fairy tale, and it takes a tremendous amount of faith to believe it. Honest, true, scientific observation has shown that life, especially intelligent life, never just appears out of nothing. And inorganic dust never produces life of any kind. Anybody that's ever canned green beans knows what I'm talking about. You put that jar of green beans in a pressure cooker and you kill everything in it and let that lid seal down on it, it's good for years. There is no life going to form on its own inside that jar. Now, you put it in a water bath canner, you better not eat them. But anyway, so how did the first intelligent creatures appear? They had to have a supernatural life giver. The first intelligent life had to be created by an infinite and eternal, intelligent, supernatural being, one who is not natural and or physical, but exists outside of time and space. That means you can't see him. That's what that means. Relax. If you've got any intelligence at all, you can be sure that God is real. Now, let's go on down to morality. Let's talk about morality just a minute. There ain't a lot of that going on nowadays. Morality demands a moral lawgiver. Everybody knows that some things are good, some things are evil, some things are right, and some things are just wrong. I don't care whether you believe in God or not. Everybody knows it. Why do most people think that it's evil or wicked for an adult to torture an innocent child just for the fun of it? Or for a man to beat and rape an innocent woman, or for people to kidnap and sell children to people who sexually abuse them, then murder them when they lose interest in them? Who don't think that's evil? Okay. Even atheists admit there is such a thing as good and evil. Now, scientists don't have any way to measure morality. But everybody knows that some actions are good and other actions are evil. Atheist author Michael Ruse wrote a book where he defended Darwinism, and he finally had to admit in his book The man who says that it is morally acceptable to rape little children is just as mistaken as the man who says 2 plus 2 equals 5. And then this philosopher. I hate them almost as much as I do theologians. But anyway, Francis Beckwith said, those who deny obvious moral rules, who say that murder and rape are morally benign, that cruelty is not a vice, and that cowardice is a virtue, do not merely have a different moral point of view, they got something wrong with them. The same way 2 plus 2 equals 4, and that's not racist, by the way. The same way 2 plus 2 is 4, every rational human can know that some things are good and other things are evil. But the only way good and evil can exist is if there's a real point of reference. You got to have something to refer to. Where'd that come from? If you call something morally right or wrong, there got to be a standard that you're applying. If man, as the communists say and the evolutionists say, if mankind is nothing but matter in motion, how can anything be wrong? How can you say anything is wrong? Atheists admitting some things are morally wrong shows how stupid they are. How can an atheist logically call something evil or wicked if man ain't nothing but matter in motion? They say we just evolved ourselves out of rock and slime 1 billion years ago. How could our instinctive knowledge of right and wrong come from rocks and slime? Moral values don't come from rocks and slime. I've never heard of any wrong rocks or immoral minerals or corrupt chemicals. People don't talk about them. Donkeys being depraved or evil elephants or immoral monkeys. Pigs ain't punished for being immoral if they eat another pig's food. Komodo dragons are not corrupt because 10 of them eat their young'uns. Killer whales are not guilty of murder. Dogs are not criminals for stealing another dog's bones. The fact that humans think about right and wrong proves how big the gap is between humans and animals, and proves that morality did not come from animals. Atheistic evolutionists have admitted that humans are the only ones who have morals. This big-time evolutionist, George Gaylord Simpson, said good and evil, right and wrong are irrelevant except from the human point of view, where they become real and impressive features of the whole cosmos as viewed morally, because morals arise only in man. So they admit it. Atheists admit that people, even atheists, have their own sense of morality. Nobody in their right mind says that about animals. All this atheist garbage is the bow that shoots Satan's fiery arrows into your head. And most folks don't even realize that the doubts that they sometimes have about God are arrows that Satan is shooting at them from this atheistic bow he's got. Now, atheists have got to do 2 things to deny God is real. Well, actually, it's 4 things. They got to reject the argument that moral values exist, so God exists. That's the moral law. If moral values exist, God exists. They've got to accept the idea that morality somehow just arose out of rocks and slime. They got to accept the idea that things like genocide, rape, murder, theft, child abuse, and all that stuff cannot be condemned as wrong because we're nothing but matter in motion. They got to agree that nobody can be punished for immoral actions because there's no such thing as morality or ethical laws. Well, think about this. If God ain't real, there's no such thing as right and wrong. If there's no God, there's no reason to say some things are right and some things are wrong. Good and evil can only exist if there is a real, objective reference point outside of nature. And the only logical answer is a moral lawgiver. I'm saving the best one for last. There was a man called C.S. Lewis, one of the greatest Christian writers of the 20th century. He's a good friend of J.R.R. Tolkien. He wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the Chronicles of Narnia, and all that stuff. And those are all Christian allegories, by the way. He started out at Oxford. His goal in getting an education at Oxford was to prove that God didn't exist and Christianity was a hoax. I mean, that's how he started out. And he spent years trying to do it. By the time he got done, he was one of the greatest apologists for Christianity that the world has ever seen. Okay. The resurrected Jesus demands a supernatural explanation. Now, human beings can do a lot of amazing things. We can do a lot of stuff that's really amazing. Some people, there's a fella that run 26.2 miles without stopping. They can show remarkable courage in the face of danger. They can stretch a tightrope across Niagara Falls and walk across on a tightrope. They can do all kind of remarkable stuff. But there's some things that normal humans can't do. Normal humans can't walk on water. Normal humans can't give sight to the blind. They can't instantly reattach a severed ear with just their hand. They can't raise the dead. If a man who could do all that stuff ever existed, it would prove God is real. Now, atheists agree with that. They agree that that's true. If the atheist philosopher Dan Barker said, if Jesus were to materialize and do miraculous deeds, then atheism would be destroyed and the existence of God would be established as a fact. Well, the proof that Barker and all these other atheists are looking for was given 2,000 years ago when God came to earth in the form of a man, and he didn't just claim to be God. There was plenty of folks running around doing that at that time, by the way. He did all the things that God would do to prove he was who he said he was. Jesus fulfilled 456 precise prophecies and performed countless public supernatural miracles. He was killed and then came back from the dead 3 days later. The life, death, and resurrection of Jesus testify that God is real. That's what C.S. Lewis tried for years to disprove, and at every turn he got knocked back. It's true. It's true. Every evidence he looked for. If whenever you have one of those thoughts, one of those doubts that just eats at you. This guy, that old boy in a wheelchair, Dawkins, in 2012, somebody asked him in a news interview, he was asked about, why don't you believe in God? And he answered him, said, well, that's a very difficult and interesting question because, I used to think that if somehow, a great big giant 900-foot high Jesus with a voice like Paul Robeson suddenly strode in and said, I exist and here I am. But even that, I actually sometimes wonder if that would convince me. Now, he admitted that there was a possibility of disproving atheism with a 900-foot high Jesus. He still rejected the real, historical, miracle-working, resurrected from the dead Jesus. And that kind of irrational, hard-headed unbelief, it ain't nothing new. There was folks, a lot of them, that lived and worked and walked with Jesus when he was on earth. They were around him. And that place where he grew up wasn't a big town. It wasn't big as Bakewell. And they knew him. They were around him every day. They saw him do these supernatural things. They saw him do them, and they still rejected him. So John 11:45. I'm going to start with John 11:45. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went their ways to the Pharisees and told them what things Jesus had done. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees in a council, and said, What do we? For this man doeth many miracles. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans will come and take away our place and our nation. And one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, Ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. And this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for the nation, and not for that nation only, but also he should gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad. Then from that day forth they took counsel together for to put him to death, knowing that he was doing miracles by the power of God. They counseled to put him to death. So it shouldn't be no surprise today that a lot of folks just reject God in spite of all the evidence. Now, these atheists, all these arrows in Satan's quiver there, they like to say, brag that their way of thinking is logical, reasonable, and intellectual. The truth is that atheism just ignores simple logic. And it says stuff like this. Everything somehow come from nothing, but they don't know what. They say that an explosion caused exquisite complexity and order instead of a pile of mangled debris. That random chance produced precision, like a monkey sitting at a typewriter writing Shakespeare. Life just sort of popped into existence on its own, and a well-designed universe just happened without a designer. And that fish and frogs is our ancestors. That intelligence came from rocks and slime, and man is on the same moral level as a moose. All right? Now they're trying to convince you and other folks that they're riding this stallion named common sense, but they're just stumbling around on the back of a jackass named foolishness. That's what it is. When you start having these doubts, get your shield of faith up, because here's a possible list of the reasons why you can carry that shield of faith high. And they're not spiritual reasons, they're logical reasons. Matter has to have a maker. Life has to have a life giver. Design has to have a designer. Intelligence demands an intelligent creator, and morality demands a moral law giver. Now, the historical, miracle working, resurrected Jesus demands a supernatural explanation, which means that there's got to be a supernatural, eternal, and infinitely powerful God. The way this old atheist that spent 50 or 60 years being an atheist and finally got converted before he died said, I must say again that the journey to my discovery of the divine has thus far been a pilgrimage of reason. I have followed the argument where it has led me, and it has led me to accept the existence of a self-existent, immutable, immaterial, omnipotent, and omniscient being. It is my fervent prayer that you acknowledge the existence of a loving, infinite, and eternal, omniscient God, and accept His free gift of salvation. He gave because of His love for you. Like I said, that wasn't gonna be no regular Sunday school lesson. I hope somebody needed that and got something out of it.
Amen. Did y'all enjoy that unregular or
Highly irregular.
irregular Sunday school lesson? Amen. I do appreciate Brother Floyd.